My name is Dylan Amadeck, and my project is titled The Nobility of Joy and consists of the first 40 pages of my novel-length work, Shadows in the Sun. Shadows is a work of high fantasy, inspired by Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, and most of all, Dungeons & Dragons. I work in conversation specifically with these works of entertainment literature because Shadows was written for the express purpose of being enjoyed by those who read it. I've long found myself inspired by stories, worlds, and realms of literature, and so, when tasked with crafting something of my own, I sought to provide that kind of joy to others. Shadows is a world written with inclusivity in mind, where characters represent a variety of skill sets and identities, from the bisexual Othella, Sun Lord of the Altari High Elves, to the homosexual Ulfin, Orc General of the city of Macraga, to the pansexual furfolk Durrano, who is mostly just trying to survive. The idea behind this variety is simple. People tend to enjoy a story more when they can see themselves in it, and fantasy is a genre severely lacking in representation. Shadows both fits within and confronts various norms of the fantasy genre in my attempt to write the most engaging and entertaining story that I could. With that in mind, please enjoy this excerpt from Shadows, which consists of the first half of the cosmogonic story of this world. Long, long ago, before even my existence, there was but one being in the universe, Rotoha, the mother of all creation. One day, she grew bored, and so she created the stars, our world, and moon for her entertainment. In time she favored our world and added to it plants, tending to the lands and seas as her gardens. But they were static, and once again she grew bored, and so she seeded this world with the creatures of the land, sea, and air. But you see, these creatures accomplished little. They were too simple to do anything grand, and so, in time, she grew bored of them in their cyclical nature. There were changes. Her creatures would, over the course of eons, change in and of themselves in ways that benefit them, but she grew bored of such incredibly slow changes. She tried to create new, more interesting creatures, monsters and such, improved creatures such as the various griffins of the Ruhanar, the dire wolves and siege beasts of the Shadow Isles, and the mysterious beasts of the Feylands and the like. But as impressive as they were, they too existed with no further will than to eat, mate, and prolong their lives to repeat the process. After another few eons she grew bored of this as well, and so she set about creating the first true intelligence, dragons. Now these dragons were neither the nearly mindless and destructive Dreki, nor the wise and contemplative Shalran, but something else, a mix of the two, or rather, their shared ancestor. Unlike the beasts before them, dragons could think. This, Ritoha hoped, would provide more entertainment, and they did, for a while. You see, the dragons had societies in a way, they had ideas, they had culture. She also granted them the first magic, the capability to shape the world themselves, far more than simple creatures like a termite or a beaver might. Some dragons could see the future and act on it, create change. But in time, Ritoha grew bored of them as well. Although they had thought and magic, they contained within them no strife, no drive. While conflict existed, it was only ever small, and to Ritoha boring. Ritoha thought on this problem and believed she needed another being of divine power who could surprise her. After all, unchecked power is boring. So Ritoha created her first son, a new god out of pure light of the sun. She thought that he would be able to think of things she could not, and thus entertain her. His name was Zenson. Zenson set to work immediately. He thought that creatures of mind and magic would be perfect, and created for himself the Altari, out of the same light from which he was born. Nearly 37,000 years ago, he created the first of their kind and granted them dominion over this, his mother's world, by giving them minds above even the dragons, and a life that would never end unless cut short by violence. This displeased Ratoha, and so she told her dragons to kill these new creatures to regain her world, but many refused. She had granted the dragons the ability to choose, never suspecting that they would choose to turn their backs on her, and thus the dragons changed with their choice, although we know not how. Those who chose peace changed through the eons, their minds growing as they set aside their primal nature and joined the Altari. Those who attacked, however, were shunned by all intelligent life. They went mad over time, falling from grace and becoming little more than the monsters that came before them. They became the Dreki, perfectly suited to kill and consume, creatures of hatred and power who keep our continent split in two by maintaining the scorched rubble they call home. The Dreki lost much of their intelligence and became nearly unparalleled predators. The Shalran's minds grew, some say to rival that of any other race to this day. Despite their victory, those who would become the Shalran's populations dwindled, as they focused on ideas over fornication. But the Dreki multiply as any beast. After this war, Ratoha realized that these new beings may be of value. each and every one of them capable of innovation, and unlike her creations, these beings also had a drive to change their world. They could speak both with each other and the Shauran, they could build, and with Zensen's great gift of special steel, there was little they could not do.